that on Instagram.
Yeah, it's not doing it. This is so weird.
No.
Okay.
Mine allowed me to do it.
Okay.
It was glitching last week too.
You see mine? I think I don't know what I did. I just clicked buttons for Facebook.
Putting the key in again, but I'm like, oh, it says I'm live, but
Right
it's
now.
not showing me as live.
Hey, we're live for Wealthy and Worthy Wednesday. It is on there, Jay.
Okay, cool.
Yep, it's on there.
All right.
All right, cool. All right, y'all. Listen, we getting into it, all right? Because we got a juicy topic today, all right, for Wealthy Worthy Wednesday. So last week, somebody in our community actually asked a question that really stuck with us. And so we were like, oh my gosh, that's so good. We need to come back to it, circle up, and have a discussion around it, all right? So the question that she asked was, what do you do when you're aligned with the work, but you are not aligned with the people you are working with? Pause. Okay. All right. And the reason why we loved it, right, is because it can be super easy to leave work when you hate work, right? Or you hate the job, right? It's really more complicated when the mission fits, but the work ain't quite fitting, right? And the people, the culture, maybe the leadership or the style of communication, right? Or sometimes maybe even the room may just feel a little off, right? So it's some of those things that, many of my high achieving women and even myself, having been in the workplace, you kind of pick up these spidey senses, right? And you're like, something just not quite fitting, right? And this can be a really complex and layered form of professional misalignment. And so we want to really talk about it, right? Because now it's like your decision is not around passion or interest or impact. You're actually making a strategic decision or being invited to make a strategic decision around environment, right? And the truth that you have to know and understand is that you can love the mission, right? But still be completely drained by the room, right? And today we want to unpack that a little bit, right? So we want to talk about, how do we assess whether this is friction or really just misalignment, right? And when do we recalibrate versus reposition, right? How long can your wealth and your leadership sustain in this kind of scenario, right? And then lastly, we want you to be able to know if you're tolerating something simply because you're capable or you feel capable, right? Because alignment, right, is not always about what you do. It's also about who you build with. All right. Now that can be very layered because that shows up in a professional setting, but it can also show up in friendships. It can show up in interpersonal relationships. It can show up in marriages, right? So we want to really kind of teach you the core principles, have conversation, invite you into looking at this a little bit differently, and give you some things that you can reflect on and assess and adjust in your own world. All right. So let's get into it. I'm gonna pass it off to our legacy host, Miss Stephanie.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Tiana. So before I kick off today, I want to begin with a quote that I read earlier this week that says, sometimes the assignment is clear, but the alignment isn't. When you know the work is right, but the people around you aren't, the real question becomes, do you shrink the mission or shift the circle? And I thought that was so powerful, especially for this week's conversation. So today I'm going to kick off with you, Talana, and ask, how does relational misalignment show up in subtle ways before it becomes obvious conflict?
Okay, let me unmute first. Hi, ladies. Hi, everyone. So I would say that most of the time it doesn't show up as conflict at first. It shows up as a pattern, right? So it's usually a pattern that we've felt over time. And sometimes I think sometimes when you come into situations, it could be pretty immediate. Like, without a shadow of a doubt, I am not aligned with this person. We do not share the same values. Our goals are not the same. Boom, I'm out. Right? It doesn't require any question, right? But there are some times where you get into like relationship with people or business deals with people or partnerships and things of that nature, and you feel it subtly over time. So you might start noticing it when you feel like uneasy in conversations, is not really flowing quite well. It's not that you or they have said anything like outright, but the energy just feels different, right? So maybe you're explaining yourself a little more than you usually do. Maybe you're holding back certain thoughts, and conversations that maybe you used to be able to have more easily. In relationships, it looks like the shutdown, right? So it looks like, I don't really want to bring this up because I don't know how this person's going to react. I don't know how they'll respond to this. Are they going to pop off? Is it going to be an argument or disagreement back and forth? Sometimes it looks like you may be the only one adjusting, right? And that's kind of how I can tell like there's a misalignment. It looks a lot different, like maybe in marriage or like with people that you have like close-knit relationships with. And you're probably more prone to try to work those things through because you care about those relationships. But when you feel like you're the only one smoothing things out, or that it's like a difficult like push to try to get some type of commonality or some type of agreement within, I think one practical example would be you stop like initiating, everything kind of goes quiet, right? Or you stop texting first, or you stop the planning and the taking over or the guiding or the leading. It's usually a sign that there is an imbalance. And so I would say that misalignment often whispers before it like screams. And so just paying attention to those subtle cues, I think, is pivotal when building relationships in any area of your life.
No, I love that. And you start off by saying that it shows up as a pattern, right? And I'm just talking about me. I'm not talking about anyone else, me. So when I think about patterns, that breeds familiarity. So like I could see a pattern and I know, okay, I'm always seeing this pattern of misalignment, but I'm just like, oh, I'm used to this. So I can kind of vibe with it, right?
Right.
And so with that being said, psychologically, Jeannie, how does someone know if it's interpersonal tension versus deeper value misalignment?
Deeper value misalignment in the workspace, you mean, or deeper value misalignment as a whole?
Just as a whole.
Oh, okay, excellent. Well, I mean, I think I can say just off cuff, generally speaking, when we're having misalignment with the people, we tend to feel frustrated towards those people, right? We have that experience of them inside of our space. So we will feel irritated with the way that they communicate, even if they're not communicating particularly any old way. We're not enjoying them. Maybe if it has to do with interacting with someone in the workspace who's a part of leadership, you're consistently feeling very distrustful of them, questioning their judgment, saying things in mind that include things like, I can work here and I love working here, but the people here are kind of strange. Or, meetings tend to drain me, right? Because meetings include tons of people, where on an individual basis, when I'm working on my own, I feel a deep sense of flow. I feel a deep sense of being able to set my own cadence and feel committed to my cadence in a way that makes me feel happy and fulfilled. A general misalignment with self, though, if we're seeing that inside of the mission of what we're doing in work, we might see a lack of belief in our goals. Or so it's kind of underwhelming. Like, we tick that off, but I don't really care about that. We will see boredom. I think boredom is a huge, huge, huge indicator that you are not aligned with whatever it is that you are doing. Underwhelm and boredom, to me, like neutrality, means I don't care which way it goes. I'm an extremely intentional person, and psychologically, we are quite intentional people. When we're letting things sit and we're not actually deciding yes or no or right or wrong, and it's not one of those gray areas where we require flexibility. It's generally because you're not in tuned, like you're not wanting to move inside of flow in those moments. There's also this kind of moral discomfort sometimes that come with like the outcomes. I don't feel particularly proud of what happened in those outcomes. I know that I put that in and that's what happened, but I don't feel proud of it. So generally, that's what we see psychologically.
I love that. And you talked a lot about the psychological side. So I want to come over to you, Dr. J. And I'm just curious, what does chronic people misalignment do to the body over time? Because I know we've all heard that the body kind of keeps the score.
Yes. So I think the most important thing to be aware of is how we as an individual responds to stress. And depending on our personalities, depending on how we've been raised, it can show up in a lot of different ways. So, for example, let's say you're in the workplace and you're working with someone who tends to dominate conversations or dominates certain activities that needs to be done in the workplace. There are some people who tend to go more into isolation, where they will go more into isolation and they will be more likely to not speak up for themselves, right? And it could be because maybe they've experienced that in the past where, they have been dominated as a child and they feel more protected to go into isolation mode. On the contrary, if a different person experiences a person in the workplace who tends to take control and dominate, and they also have a personality type that tends to also dominate during stressful conversation, I mean during stressful periods, then you can see how that also creates conflict in itself, right? And so doing that over time and not being aware of how we respond to stress over time can lead to chronic stressful states within our body. And with chronic stress, I feel like sometimes we speak about stress like, oh, I'm just stressed. But there are actual physiologic implications that occurs in our body. So, for example, chronic stress over time will increase our cortisol levels. That appears how insulin works. Um, Insulin is a hormone that helps to regulate our blood sugar. And so with chronic stress from which increases cortisol level, it can increase our insulin levels. And that can cause dysregulated blood sugar, and that can lead to increased fat storage. And everybody knows type 2 diabetes. It can also lead to type 2 diabetes. That also, chronic stress over time also impairs our sleep as well. And that becomes a vicious cycle because impaired sleep will also increase our cortisol level. And so it just becomes a vicious cycle. And even when you're talking about the weight management and metabolic health space, that impairs our metabolic health. Metabolic health is really how our body really navigates energy, how our body reconciles, our macronutrients like our glucose and our fats and our amino acids. And so you create a dysregulated system within your body just from chronic stress. And so stress does have real physiologic implications. And I think the first thing is understanding us, understanding, okay, every time I meet somebody with this personality, this is how I respond, right? And actually going back, okay, why do I even respond this way? How can I have a different approach? And so I think it comes back to self and learning our stress response so it can prevent chronic stressful states.
No, that is really helpful. I was over here taking notes as you were talking because I think sometimes, and Dr. Tiana, you've probably heard are a lot of high functioning women who say, I work well under stress, when we know that you really don't, but that's what we tell ourselves, that we work well under stress. So how do we as women know when tension and stress is productive versus corrosive?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say, kind of piggybacking off Dr. J, right? The chronic stress that she mentioned, which is like persistent. So think, because what I want to do is clarify for you all the difference between chronic stress and just regular stress, right? And when we talk about chronic stress, I want to be very, very clear that it is not to be managed. It is to be eliminated. Okay. And the reasons why are because of the things that Dr. J just described, those physiological impacts on the body that corrode your health and well-being over a period of time, right? So when I say chronic stress, when I'm working with my clients and I'm talking about chronic stress, I'm talking about what we're talking about today, being in a place where you just are allergic to the people, right? Or the conditions in that environment, right? That is chronic because that is something you're having to wake up to every single day, right? Whereas kind of that intermittent stress, or what you may hear physicians call acute stress, is kind of intermittent healthy stress, right? Like you have a deadline coming up at work, or you have a really big project that you've been working on and you're just really excited and you want it to go really, really well, right? So you have kind of these little spurts of high stress, right? That's normal. That is the ebb and flow. And if you have a healthy balance, then you will come back to baseline after that, right? But if you have that chronic and it is persistent, and you are having unexplained weight gain, you're having colitis, you're having migraines, you're having all of these things are signals. They're warning signs from your body trying to tell you, hey, we're a little bit over capacity here, right? And as powerful and impactful and capable women that we are, we often blow right past those red flags. We're like, I got this. I just need to push harder. I just need to get it together. I just need to plan better. Let me pull out my calendar with my highlighter and make sure that it's all together, right? Wrong. It's wrong, right? And it may have worked for you at a period of time, but you will know when it stops working.
No, that's really helpful. And Jeannie, I saw you over there shaking your head. And I know we've had this conversation time and time again about how women can know whenever they're stressed, but we may have some new viewers who are tuning in today. And so could you share a little bit with the audience with what emotional signals indicate that someone might be operating in survival mode?
Absolutely, I'd love to. And I was shaking my head, absolutely. Because I mean, Dr. Tiana and Dr. J as well. Like I can't tell you how invaluable this is to women to have these understandings that like this is highly consequential, highly, highly consequential. And that there are these huge differences between having acute stress or acute pressure, understanding that there's like a deadline that I have when this is all going to stop, when I'm going to ensure that not only does it stop and I return to baseline, but that I actively am intentional about recovery. Recovery is the difference between chronic stress and acute stress, right? Chronic stress is this highly long-term activation of the body's stress system, right? And that means I'm always on. And that's what they feel, always on. When you're inside of consistent hypervigilance, right? When you're inside of heightened irritability, when you're constantly fatigued, when you're consistently numb or at times removed, sort of like you're floating, that's when you know I'm inside of chronic stress. Because one, I'm not replenishing. You know, my body as a whole is in this long-term exposure to constant activation, and I'm not sleeping well. Metabolically, like Dr. J is saying, I mean, I probably have like stress belly. I don't know if you've ever seen a woman who can be like quite thin, but she has this like kind of protruded belly, right? This like that's all that stress, right? Hanging out right there because the metabolism is affected in that way. Women who are consistently getting colds, you're not feeling well all the time. When you used to be someone who is like super healthy, right? You're like, you used to pride yourself on like, I never really get sick. I'm totally good. But all of a sudden, every other week, you have a cold, and especially during flu season. So you're more susceptible in those ways. You know, other people have issues with headache, tension headaches when it comes to the physiological. They have issues with their memory. I've had some women who are in my life who I know they're very stressed out because they told me the same story like 3 times. And I'm like, dearest, you already said that to me. I was in there in the conversation with you previously. That's when you know that you're really overwhelmed and the stress is absolutely getting to you.
Wow. And I'm reading through the chat over here, and someone just said survival mode in the workplace often shows up in silence. And I think you all can probably agree with that. And not just in the workplace, but also at home too. And so to shift gears a little bit, Talana, I want to ask you, how does overfunctioning distort partnership dynamics when we're talking about, women who are choosing to stay silent?
Okay. let's get into this, people. Okay. So overfunctioning usually starts with great intention, right? We have great intention, and I do this often. And believe me, just because we're on here does not mean that we have it all figured out. Now, we have overcome a lot of obstacles for you so that we can show you and teach you how not to make the same mistakes. But it is an ongoing struggle for many of us, right? And so overfunction is something that I constantly have to be aware of and work on. So you usually see a gap in something, whether if it's personal relationships, business, friends, or building businesses, or have things going on. And you're like, girl, I can take that for you. I can do this, right? You want the relationship to work, so you step in, you handle the planning, the emotional labor, the follow-ups, and it becomes like, just let me take care of it. Right? That's what it looks like. Just let me take care of it, girl. I got it. I got it. Don't worry about it. I'm gifted in this area. I'm skilled in this area. I can do this with my eyes closed, right? At least that's what we think, until we have too many eyes closed moments and then it starts to pile up. But over time, if one person is constantly filling every gap, the relationship slowly shifts. And before we know it, we have set this atmosphere where we become the go-to or the do-it person. So what started as partnership starts to feel more like responsibility, right? So you might notice that you're always the one bringing the alignment back together. So if there's tension, you're the one addressing it or bringing it up as an issue. If something needs to happen, you're the one organizing it, right? And the other person may not even realize that this is happening because the overall system that you created has quietly adjusted around your capacity. Let me say that again. Hold on. The overall atmosphere or system that you have created has quietly adjusted around your capacity and what it is that you can do and what it is that you bring to the table. And that's not partnership. That's not relationship. Eventually you start feeling tired in a ways that's deeper than just being busy, right? And that's the signal that the dynamic may need to change, shift, or be rebalanced, because you have come in and pretty much taken over, and it's become a Talana show or a Tiana show or a Jeannie show versus a partnership where we both bring our strengths together to make this thing work, where everybody feels balanced and in order. And so yeah, that's what I would say.
I think we could end with you because that was so good. You just dropped so many
Yeah.
bars, so many. And one thing, well, two things that I really like that you said, that overfunctioning starts with good intentions. And I think that's what we forget. And then
Yes.
also, whenever you said what started off as partnership turns quickly into responsibility. And that's also something that we as women for sure overlook. So, Dr. Tiana, my question for you is, how does staying too long in those misaligned rooms impact your long-term wealth?
Baby, listen. Because listen, I'm always worrying about the coins, okay? Listen, it is going to, listen, it's going to keep you small, okay? Bottom line, it's going to keep you small. And because money is an extension in your life, in our lives, right? Your money is going to stay small, right? Because you have not recognized at, how do I say this better? Okay, so the person who applied for the job, right, and was like, oh my gosh, this is a great job. I have these values that are super, super important to me, and I'm choosing this type of work. I'm choosing this employer because it aligns with my values, right? And once you get in and you're like, okay, cool, I'm still on par with the mission, right? But I'm really feeling these people. Okay, I don't appreciate how my boss talks to me. I don't appreciate how my colleagues are all nosy and in my business and calling me antisocial if I don't tell them my personal life, right? You know what I'm talking about, okay? You know exactly what I'm talking about. So when that starts to happen, right, and you're kind of like side-eyeing folks and you're like, I don't really know, right? What you're doing is you're denying the truth. Because the truth is that one part is aligned with what you value and what you prioritize, but there's another part that is not aligned with that. And two things can be true at the same time, right? But then it becomes an individual thing to discern whether this means I need to adjust, right, in this current environment, or do I actually need to abort and find a new place that can match both. Because what I see happen often with my clients, right, is they, and honestly, even when I was in corporate, right, as a senior director, I would often tell my staff, you are not a tree, okay? You can move. This is not the only place that you can work, right? And I've definitely gotten some slack from senior leadership from these conversations. But I think it's super important. If you are a leader and you are leading other people, you are honest, right? And you let them know this is a business, number one, and the work has to happen. There are specific outcomes and targets, right? But there may be a better place for you as far as culture, as far as environment, as far as community, that better aligns with what you prioritize and value. And that is okay. There are a million places to work, right? Like, and I think we get so hung up because it's like, oh, well, I, went through all of this to get this job and to be here. I see this a lot with my academics, right? Me, myself, having left academia, right? I see lots of women who have doctoral degrees and they are so terrified to leave the ivory towers. Why? Because they have created their identity around this place. And that's not real because they don't own your identity. I am still a scientist outside of any university that I would ever work at. Nobody can ever take that away from me. And when people come to me and I provide a service through my research consulting firm, I'm still a scientist and I'm showing up as the exact same Dr. Rogers as I showed up when I worked in a university, right? And so I think what happens is we misplace our identity. We put it into something that is external and it's always going to let us down. It's always going to let us down, right? And so that is the thing that I want you, if you are watching this live or you're watching this back on the replay, right? Hold tight to that because your identity is what is the anchor, right? That keeps you steady. And when you're in environments or new people come into your environment and it does not align or it makes your anchor not as steady, right? Then you are getting information, data, right? So you're actually able to make decisions around that data. And I really encourage you to look at the data, right? Don't be in denial and don't betray yourself because you're afraid to look at what the data is actually telling you, right? Because feelings aren't fact, right? Listen, the numbers don't lie, all right? So the data is what you want to be looking at because that's what's going to help you inform your next best move. I'm off my soapbox, but listen, ultimately, don't give up your identity because it's going to impact your coins, all right? So make sure, all right, that we got that identity real clear and real anchored, and don't compromise in it because if you do, your money's going to compromise.
Oh, that is so good. And what Dr. Tiana so eloquently just told all of you all, especially the women watching, is that you're still that girl. And if you're a man and you're watching, you're still the man. It doesn't matter what room you're walking in. So, ladies, I hate that our time together is wrapping up, but before we end, I do want to ask one final question. So, for those who are watching, what is the most important question a woman or man could ask herself or himself before making a move and exiting a room they feel like they are not aligned with? And I am going to start with you, Talana.
Okay, so piggybacking off of what Tiana just said, where she's talking about who you are, your identity, showing up as your authentic self, pretty much, right? So the question I would walk away with is, am I able to fully be myself here? Or am I constantly adjusting just to stay in the relationship or in the environment? Because there's a big difference, right? So growth will stretch you, it will challenge you, but healthy relationships still leave room for you to stand in who you are. Right. And so if you find yourself constantly shrinking parts of your voice, your perspective, your presence, pay attention to that, because that's important data, which Dr. Tiana just talked about, right? That's important data and information that you need so that you can make an informed decision moving further, whether this relationship is for me, whether this environment is for me. Sometimes the work is right and it's in alignment, but the environment around it isn't. And when that happens, the real decision becomes whether the relationship can grow with you or whether you've outgrown the dynamic altogether. And so, yeah, that's what I would say. Like, you have to be able to show up as your true authentic self. If I can't show up as me, then I don't need to be in the room, period.
I love that. And what about you, Dr. J? I saw you, Dr. Tiana.
Yeah, so I'm such a values person. And so I would ask myself, what are my top 3 values within this workplace, whether it be leadership, whether it be community, whether it be challenge, but healthy challenge in a way that stimulates my mind and my growth and just who I am as a person. And so what are my top 3 values, and am I living within alignment of those values?
Okay, and then I'm going to toss over to you, Jeannie.
Just re-ask the question for me really quick. I want to make sure that I heard it correctly.
What is the most important question a woman or a man should ask himself or herself before making a move to leave a room that no longer fits them?
Okay, excellent. I love that question. That's fantastic. I think before we're making a move to exit something that's not working for us, I would always ask myself the question of like, what is my level of threshold? So what degree of conflict am I willing to experience within myself, within my internal values, within my motivations, within my interpersonal style? And I would ask that question because there's something that's occurring that's creating this essence or this impulse to move and change, right? To get out of the room. So I need to have an inventory of what happened there and be very intentional before I leave the room that I have that all marked down for myself. So then when I'm entering into the next room, I can know, hey, I'm not still where I was. I actually chose something that's a great deal better for me than the historical experience I had, which obviously created so much chronic cognitive friction because all this dissonance I'm experiencing in like being in a space where like I don't believe in what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway for whatever period of time I did it. So we want to trust ourselves to do that. We need to understand what wasn't working, what was conflicting, what degree we have a threshold, and then know that and then move on to the next, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I want to end with you, Dr. Tiana. What are the parting words that you have for those who are watching about what question they should be asking whenever they feel like it could be time for them to walk out the room?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 things. I actually will give you 2 questions. One is, what do I want? What do I want? What do you want? Because many times, my high achieving women will hesitate to even say it out loud, what they really want. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is, am I running from something or am I running to something? Right? Because sometimes we can want to escape because we just don't want to face our truth. We don't want to face the consequences of decisions that we've made, right? So we can want to be escapist, like try to escape, right? Or avoid maybe hard decisions or maybe scenarios that would cause us to grow, right? Because not all discomfort means that it's time to jump ship, right? Sometimes it requires me to look at myself and say, okay, what is it that I want or need to learn here? Or am I just trying to like absolve myself of any accountability? So it takes radical honesty, right? That's the principle that I want you to walk away with, is radical honesty, asking yourself, what do you really want? And then actually being more curious and saying, you know, am I running towards something or am I running away from something? Because these things will help you better discern what your next move should be, right? So I'll give you an example. When I first became a parent and I had the urge within me to leave my job and not go back to my my role as a senior director, and everything in me was like, this is it, this is the time, it's either now or never, right? You gotta do the thing, you're already out, so you just gotta stay out, right? But at that time, I had to get really honest with myself, number one, about the numbers, because listen, the coins always need to make sense. But number two, about what I wanted. And what I wanted at that time was flexibility. And I wanted to be a very present mother to my child. And my current employer was amazing, beyond supportive. I took, I think, 9 months off. And when I went back, I only worked Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays for like 4 months, right? So you're talking a whole year of me being able to do what was important to me in that season, right? And so I think that that's one of the, what is happening? Oh, sorry, my LinkedIn live just went live. But I had to get really clear, right, about what is it that I want right now. And then you can count the cost, right? Because then I was like, okay, like I do want to leave my job because I want to do this thing over here. But right now, this is most important to me. And so how can I negotiate and decide, you know, what my next move is going to be, right? The world is abundant. And if you just have the courage to ask, you might actually be surprised at how much God wants to honor the desires of your heart. And so, yeah, it was beautiful, and it worked out better than I could have imagined. And so I want you all to have that ability and to be able to practice that, because it didn't come because I just decided one day it was important to me. It was because I had practiced before that, asserting my values, being clear about what I need, sharing my boundaries, and then being okay with taking whatever the consequences were, positive or negative, that came with that choice, right? You got to stand 10 toes in it, right? So that is what I would leave you with, as if you are contemplating or thinking about it, or feeling kind of distressed because you're not sure what to do, but you're feeling some kind of way.
So good.
Well, thank you. That was good. And thank you all, as always, for all of your advice and your input into today's conversations. To our audience, if you're watching, please feel free to share, repost, all the things to make sure that we are continuing to get this message out to all of the men and women across this country and across the world. But until next time, we will see you next Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.